Brian's doing what he usually does, and that's working, which is always appreciated. So I'm going to do something important, too, that we haven't done yet. We're kind of golden black half live. I think we had a little bit of problem with the live stream, so if you're watching this, you're watching it on replay, which we know a lot of people do it that way. Triple X, one of our sponsors, Kerry and Greg Ayersman, we very much appreciate all they do for us. On the hill, but on the level, a Purdue tradition since 1929. John Basham and the good folks at Basham Reynolds. And John has been a longtime sponsor of us. Hilton Garden Inn, Christy Kuntz, when tomorrow's a big day, State HDI tonight, and of course, State Farm agent Trent Johnson. Trent will be in Mackey Arena, as will a lot of people tomorrow afternoon, 4:30 tip. The Boilermakers and Illinois. And Brian, I know you just got back from basketball availability, and this is a big game, obviously, for Purdue. This is it's hard to minimize how important this game against the Fighting Illini is, just in terms of the NCAA and some extent the importance of the future of the program.
Yeah, Purdue hasn't been playing for very much the last couple of years. This is, when you look back at this is probably their biggest game since any individual game, maybe in 2012, when Purdue last had to play its way into the NCAA tournament. You remember they won at number 11 Michigan on their senior day. That was the game that really got them into the NCAA tournament. Purdue hasn't been in this position in a couple of years because Purdue hasn't been any good in a couple of years. Purdue is pretty good now, and now they're playing for something this late in the year, which is exactly what you want to be doing. I think Purdue needs to win this game to make the NCAA tournament, personally. I don't think I'm going out on a limb by saying that.
I would agree.
But I think Illinois absolutely has to win this game, too, to probably make the NCAA tournament. So this is a huge game for Purdue, but it's just as big a game for Illinois, if not bigger. So what you're going to see is two teams, presumably, that really, really want this game, and it should make for pretty good basketball.
Yeah, Illinois has struggled to some extent on the road, I guess you'd say that. However, they did win at Michigan State, and that would be, to me, that would say that they have the ability to win on the road. Obviously, this is a team, it's interesting because Purdue's losses to Illinois, Ohio State, and Michigan State, obviously the 12-point lead against Ohio State, but they had the 9-point lead against Michigan State on the road, as Purdue fans are painfully aware. And they also had a 9-point lead in the game in Champaign. Things were going very well for in that game early on, and then right before the end of the first half, things changed. A little bit similar to the Michigan State game, I thought.
Yeah, Purdue has to not turn the ball over. On the road, when you look at how they've lost, so much of what's been their downfall has been inextricably linked to turnovers. And never was that more the case, well, aside from Minnesota, where it was all turnovers.
Yeah.
At Illinois, you remember Purdue turned the ball over twice in the final minute.
Right.
Illinois goes from like 7 or 8 down, whatever it was, to up 1 at the half in the span of like 60 seconds, something like that.
Yeah.
My
You're close.
All my numbers are off, and they probably don't make any sense, but I don't care. The point being, turnovers started the landslide that undid Purdue and Illinois. They undid the landslide that undid them at Minnesota. They certainly mattered a lot at Michigan State, which scored 20 points off Purdue's turnovers. They mattered at Ohio State. Purdue just has to not turn the ball over. It has bogged down a little bit in half-court offense, as very good defensive teams have really buckled down in the second half on their home floors. But I think the most important thing is just don't turn the ball over. Just make sure that you're playing in the half-court defensively, because in the half-court defensively, Purdue's been pretty good this year.
Yeah, and had a hard time, I think, against Michigan State finding, and Matt Painter talked about it after the game, just the inability to find folks defensively. I mean, Travis Trice got away from them, which is hard for me to quite understand. But it was because it was got to be, they were, and I think you said it well on your blog, just the whole notion of there were a lot of runouts because of the nature of not only the turnovers, but the nature of the turnovers made for a lot of easy baskets. And a lot of times having a hard time, 3-on-2 situations or whatever, Purdue couldn't defend.
When Purdue plays on a balanced basketball court, if that makes any sense, it's much more likely to be successful than it is when the pace of the game is bouncing back and forth like a ping pong ball. And when Purdue turns the ball over, it lets the opponent get in transition. It gets Purdue behind plays, and it's just in compromising positions. That's led to so many of the threes Purdue has given up that have really changed games. When you look at a lot of the anecdotal evidence of what's happened to Purdue when it's struggled against some of these opponents, especially on the road. It's not happened to Purdue as much at home, but that doesn't mean the same dynamic doesn't take hold tomorrow. If Purdue turns the ball over a bunch against Illinois, Illinois is going to put 4 guards out there who can all shoot threes. The more Purdue turns the ball over, the more Purdue turns the ball over, the more Illinois is going to shoot threes, and that's going to put Purdue in a hole.
Yeah, no question. All right,
Could put Purdue in a hole,
yeah.
I should say.
Jerry Palm, who is in maybe sunny St. Louis. I don't know, Jerry. It may be warmer than it is in West Lafayette, but welcome to the show. And your check is in the mail because I think this is 2 weeks in a row. We're not going to. We always appreciate in this time of year that any time you can take with us. And Jerry, obviously, with CBS Sportsline, does all of the bracketology. So, having said that, Purdue is where, outside of being located in West Lafayette, where are the Boilermakers in terms of its NCAA hopes, in your view?
Well, I have them drift outside of the play-in game at this point in time. But this coming Saturday is vital for Purdue. It takes a little bit of pressure off the conference tournament if Purdue can win this game. But, it's the most important thing here, though, is just defending the home floor. I mean, if you're not going to win on the road, and they had 2 chances to win on the road and got off to good starts in both those games and then coughed them up in different ways, then you got to defend your home floor. And this is a really important game. It's important for both teams, but it's more important for Purdue because it's a home game. And they really have to be able to win at home if they're not going to win on the road.
Can Illinois play its way in, short of getting if the Illini lose tomorrow? Would they, in your view, have to make it to Saturday in the Big Ten tournament for the Fighting Illini to get in? Do you think?
The loser can still get in. The winner isn't guaranteed anything, but the winner is a big step ahead of the loser. That's for sure. But it's not a matter of how far you get in the conference tournament. It's a matter of who you play, because things could happen, and you could get to the championship game and not have played anybody. That really helps you. So it's your opponents. It's not just how far you get. So when you see the draw for the conference tournament, then you'll have a better idea maybe what exactly a team needs to do to get into the NCAA tournament. But until you see the draw, it's hard to say.
You look at the fact that there's been some talk. Well, is Purdue going to play on Friday, have the double bye, and the scenario is if Purdue beats Illinois and if Ohio State or Michigan State lose, Purdue will have the double bye. But is that? I may have asked you this last week. More important to, does Purdue get anything out of another victory if that victory is over Northwestern or Penn State on Thursday, in your opinion?
No, not really. Those are high-risk, low-reward games. Purdue doesn't need quantity wins. It needs quality wins. And in order to get quality wins, it needs quality opponents. So, if the goal is to win the Big Ten tournament, obviously that takes care of all these issues. Then it's better to have the double bye. But if the goal is to build an at-large quality profile, playing Nebraska or Northwestern or Minnesota doesn't really help you any.
Yeah.
Hey, Jerry, what's the difference between Purdue's resume and Illinois' resume right now? Because I'm not sure why Illinois is perceived sometimes to be behind Purdue. Is it one more conference win Purdue has, or 2 more conference wins right now?
Well, I've got Illinois behind because they're not very good against the better teams they play. They're only 3-7, I think, against the top 50. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. 5-10 against the top 100. So while they've got a couple of nice wins, Maryland at home and Baylor on a neutral floor especially, the fact that they don't have a very good record against the better teams they've played is why I've got them behind Purdue, who's more of I think they're 500 now, Purdue is, against the top 100 teams, and 4-5, I think, after the Michigan State loss against the top 50. And it's got, obviously, the 2 bad losses. Illinois' got 1, so that's more of an advantage for Illinois. But I think it's better to be better against the good competition, and that's the edge for Purdue right now.
Purdue fans might like this question. How much is Indiana hurting Purdue right now? Because Purdue beat them twice. That was a pretty good win in the RPI when they happened, and since Indiana has kind of dipped. How much does that hurt Purdue's resume?
If Indiana were to fall all the way out of the bracket, then it would hurt Purdue. But I don't think that's going to happen. In fact, I still have Indiana ahead of Purdue in the bracket. I realize that's not universally held opinion, but that's, Indiana still has had a pretty good year. They've struggled lately, but, it's the whole season. And people forget the big picture. The entire season counts. Indiana's had a pretty good season.
Yeah, you look at that, and so you are projecting I guess you're saying 7 from the Big Ten, or I mean, how does that shake out at the end? Do you think?
At the moment, 8, but it's hard for me to think that Purdue and Illinois. I mean, I don't know. It's possible they could both play their way in. I mean, it really because it's going to depend on what other teams do. You know, obviously Saturday matters, but for the loser of Saturday's game, there's still a hope to play their way in. But you know, if you don't win the conference tournament, that's the only control you have over your own destiny, is to win the conference tournament. And if you don't do that, then you are at the mercy of what happens in other places, because you might think you've done enough, and then Evansville wins the Missouri Valley tournament, or Vanderbilt wins the SEC tournament, and what you thought was enough isn't enough anymore.
Yeah.
Jerry, you just kind of started to answer my question. I was going to ask you, what leagues does Purdue and everybody else on the bubble need the favorite to win? Obviously, the Missouri Valley is one where everybody needs Wichita State or Northern Iowa to win. But what other leagues?
The West Coast Conference, Gonzaga is the only clear team in that league. BYU is a bubble team, but if they don't beat Gonzaga, I'm not sure they have a good enough profile for an at-large, and if they do, they've won the league. And certainly if somebody else won the league, that would be a stolen bid, although it might be BYU's. So the West Coast, and then anything could happen in a major conference. I mean, you know, anybody down the list of a major conference is certainly like the Seton Hall in the Big East or somebody like that who wouldn't make the tournament otherwise. And we've seen that kind of thing happen before. You know, Georgia, I remember the year that the SEC had problems with weather, and Georgia actually had to play twice in one day in the SEC tournament, was, I don't know, 12th or something in the league that year, and won the conference. You know, that stole a bid from somebody, and it's not necessarily going to be a team from that league that gets their bid stolen.
And you say at this point Purdue is off of the play-in game line from your view. I mean, that's again, we understand totally that's a moving target. What's the and of course that obviously can change, and I don't think the Big Ten has not had a team play in that game yet. Is that correct?
Iowa played in it last year.
Oh, did Iowa play in it last year? I guess I'm staying correct. Yeah, that's right. So you have an interesting dynamic of a game that could potentially, if Purdue slips a little bit, but I suppose Purdue be in a situation to take that too from that standpoint. They still want to get in the tournament.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, look, if Purdue can't beat Illinois at home, maybe they don't belong in the tournament.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a game tournament teams win this time of year. You just do. And if they don't, then, you know, then maybe they really don't belong.
Yeah. Well said. Well, hey, we thank you very much, and who knows, we might talk to you next week. There may be another story to talk. Now, are you you're in St. Louis for what's your itinerary coming up?
I'm in St. Louis for the Missouri Valley tournament. Then I will be in the CBS Sports offices in Fort Lauderdale doing video stuff for a few days, and then off to New York for CBS Sports Network television Thursday through Sunday.
All right. Well, enjoy Florida, and that'll be a whirlwind week. I am certain for you next week, and we'll look forward to watching your work on all that as things wind down. Safe travels, Jerry, and thanks again for taking the time to join us.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Brian. We have a couple minutes left here, but you know, you look at any other news and notes from today, or anything else that you found out from the availability that fans should know about heading into this game.
Not really. Obviously, a big part of tomorrow is about John Octius, it being senior day. Neil Bashir's also. Want to make sure we mention him. It's always a good story when a guy comes to a program as a non-scholarship player, sticks it out, because basically what you're doing for 4 years or 5 years, I think in his case, is putting in daily work, putting in tons of hours, and not getting a whole lot out of it in terms of, you know, actually playing and being recognized for it, and so on and so forth. So you really have to respect the walk-ons who start from day one and get all the way to senior day. And I think sometimes people don't realize that, don't appreciate those guys. They think they're just cardboard cutouts who are just there to, you know, kind of hang a jersey on. But obviously John Octius is the story of senior day tomorrow. Where Purdue would be without him, you don't even want to think about. Not only because he's been very good, a borderline all-conference guy at times this season, but also where Purdue would be at his position without him. Purdue probably doesn't want to really think about. But the reality is he kind of swooped in at the last second, 2 or 3 weeks before the season started, pretty much saved the day. You can credibly say John Octius saved Purdue's season by showing up 2 weeks into preseason practice. You have to credit Purdue's coaches, too, for finding him.
Yeah.
Because that's a situation where so much had to fall in place. They really had to work to find him, to get everything to work out. So people are going to say Matt Painter lucked into John Octius. Well, Matt Painter and his staff put a lot of work into trying to find a John Octius, and they didn't give up. It was 2 weeks before the season started, and they were still recruiting a point guard for that season, and they got it done improbably. And, I think it's worked out unbelievably well for Purdue. It's worked out well for John Octius, too. Here he is with a chance to go back to the NCAA tournament on a team that was 8-5 in December.
Yeah. You watch it closer than anyone, just passing the eyeball test. Obviously disappointing losses to Ohio State and Michigan State, where Purdue was not in a double-digit underdog, but they were more than a 5-point underdog in each one of those games. Does this team, in your evaluation, worthy of being in the NCAA tournament? I mean, or is that is that really truly still to be determined by the ability to beat Illinois?
Ask me tomorrow about 7:30.
Yeah.
I kind of agree with what Jerry just said, is that if you can't beat Illinois at home, well, maybe it's, I don't know. Purdue's got to win tomorrow. I think we can all say that. It's easy for us to say from being on the outside. It's easier said than done. This is as big a game for Illinois as it is for Purdue. Illinois, played its tail off in Champaign, and they're going to do the exact same thing tomorrow. So it's not like this is Rutgers coming in here again. It's not like this is, I don't want to say Gardner-Webb, North Florida, but it's not like this is some patsy coming in here that Purdue's just got to roll the ball out on the floor, ride the emotion of senior day, ride the magnitude of this game to a win. This is going to be a really hotly contested basketball game. And if Purdue, when it absolutely has to, can rise to the level of that sort of basketball game, yes, they belong in the NCAA tournament. For 6 weeks now, they've played like an NCAA tournament team. They lost 2 games on the road in venues very few people win in, to very good defensive basketball teams. So I don't want to overreact to 2 back-to-back games. Purdue could have won but did not. But I would probably react strongly to Purdue not being able to get it done tomorrow.
All right, well said. Okay, well, we will all know by tomorrow at around a little bit after dinner time. Sold out Mackey Arena, and should be a great environment. Usually is when Illinois comes, because Illinois also historically has brought some people over as well, so it'll be a fun environment. And Mackey Senior Day is always special as well. Brian, thank you, and I want to thank Jafar Williams and Stacy Clarity for joining us as well. And if you missed first 2 segments, we had some stream issues, so if you missed those, we will have the replay posted. Jafar had a lot to say, and well worth your time if you get the chance to view that as well. And I want to thank Jerry Palm for joining us as well. So thank you to Gordon Jackson and Ali Krusek and all the folks at WLFI for making this happen. We'll be back next week. Brian may be sitting up at the United Center. We may have him in via some kind of electronic transmission, depending on where the Boilermakers and if they're playing there. But we'll have a show next Friday, Golden Black Live. Thanks again also to our sponsors, XXX, John Basham and the folks at Basham Rental, and of course Hilton Garden Inn and State Farm agent Trent Johnson. So we'll look forward to seeing you next week, Golden Black Live, probably at the same time. That could change a little bit depending if the Boilermakers play in that second game in the afternoon, but we'll keep you posted on the site with that. Lots to be on the site here in the next week as we get ready for, I guess we're already in it, March Madness. Thanks again to everybody. We look forward to seeing you next week on Golden Black Live.